ladies and gentlemen, Paul Grand. When did I meet you? Is it a decade ago, maybe?
It's got to be at least a decade ago. Yeah.
And take me back a decade, because you weren't Paul fucking Grand a decade ago.
Am I Paul fucking Grand now?
I think so.
Thank you. So a decade ago, I mean, I was working at RCT, at the venture fund, RCT Ventures, in early stage life science venture capital, and focused on pretty broad. A decade ago, actually, I would have been focused just on Medtech. Maybe I started there in 2004.
And I hadn't realized it was that long.
Yeah.
Where were you immediately before that?
Before that, I was an entrepreneur, so I'd started 8 different companies.
I did not know this about you.
Started 8 different companies, first in tech, then in biopharma and medtech. And RCT was one of the investors in one of my companies. And after a couple of years, they asked me if I wanted to join the fund. And I thought I'd be a venture capitalist for like a year and learn the ropes and then go back out and, run another company. But I stayed there for 12 years. So it's a pretty great place. So anyways, but yeah, that's right. I mean, you and I would have met at the time when I was still a VC, that fund.
And when did you leave RCT?
So 2016, I started Medtech Innovator in 2013. But back then it was a program. It wasn't it wasn't a standalone company. And I basically did that as like a side gig, if you will, while I was still investing in companies. I was also running what, we grew to become Medtech Innovator, and it got so big in 2015, and we started the accelerator in 2015. So it wasn't just, in the beginning, it was just competitions. And then we started the accelerator in 2015 and got so many, it was very clear that it was going to outgrow what we could do at our venture fund. So we spun it out, and RCT helped put up the money to get that started along with Johnson & Johnson. And then we brought on, all the other corporate partners. But that was the year.
How many partners do you have now? I think of Johnson & Johnson as like the banner name, but are there others that are as big as Johnson at this point?
Oh yeah. I mean, we have like 27 corporate partners at this point, but the big ones, the big names are companies like Becton Dickinson, Edwards Life Sciences, Olympus Corporation, it goes on and on. We have 27 of those. Dexcom, those are all corporate partners as examples at Medtech Innovator and Nipro Corporation. I could keep going, but anyways, a lot of those.
Are you in the lobby there? Because I'm hearing background noise, and I have everyone else on.
If you're hearing noise, I'm on my balcony, but I'm going to go in my room and it'll be quieter. Hold on, I think there's somebody upstairs above me who's chatting. Hold on one second.
All good. Well, we can see if that's a luxury hotel you're staying in, anyhow.
Well, it's nice, but it's not a huge room. Okay. But let me turn the lights on because I don't have any lights on here. Anyways, ask more questions.
Well,
I'm enlightening it.
How would you say Medtech Innovator is different than other accelerators? Because there are a number of them out there now.
There are a jillion accelerators out there.
Were you among the first for Medtech?
Oh yeah, definitely. But more than being one of the earliest ones, that's probably a little brighter in here, a little better. Let me sit down. So we were one of the first, but we're the largest by far. We're the largest accelerator for medical technology in the world. All the other accelerators that are out there I shouldn't say all, like 99% of other accelerators tend to be much earlier in their stage in terms of it's people with an idea kind of stage. And they tend to be regional, meaning that they're supported usually by some kind of economic development mission. So you'll have an accelerator in Texas or an accelerator in Massachusetts or whatever, and their job is to bring jobs to that state. And so they try to find people and give them a home where they can learn about whatever it is that they're trying to learn about. In this case, let's say, being a med tech startup. And they teach them about reimbursement and regulatory and development and all things they need to know. That's what most accelerators, when we think of accelerators, do. They're like affiliated with a university, something like that. And there's some faculty who have an idea. We're a downstream accelerator. We're one of the few that would fit this kind of definition, where our criteria is the companies have to be up and running. They have to be a company. They have to have a team. They have to have at least prototypes. They have to have some early evidence that what they're doing is going to work. So it's animal, bench, cadaver, human data, whatever, but something that convinces us that this is going to work. And what we're trying to find is a sweet spot, and they even have funding in most cases, equity or non-dilutive funding. But what we're trying to do is find the companies that, as a venture capitalist, I used to meet, and I'm sure you've seen many times, Joe, where you go, oh, that's really interesting. You guys have got something really, this is really what you're doing is really important. When we find those, you get kind of excited about those companies. And then, you'll find some critical flaw at that company, that they made a mistake, maybe in their execution, not so much about the technology, but the execution. And you go like, that was really a shame. That thing should have succeeded. And it's too late. I can't fix it now. And those are the things that maybe they get bought in an asset sale or they go away entirely. And the idea was to make sure that we can help those companies succeed, and not make mistakes. I like to say the local ecosystems tend to be pretty poor everywhere in the world. There's a ton of them, and they have somebody who knows a little bit about medical devices, and they work with, whoever they have locally. But we bring the world's best ecosystem to the world's best startups. That's what we're trying to do, with no geographic affiliation whatsoever. We don't care where they're based. And
is it like a typical incubator where they come on campus and live there for 3 to 6 months or something like that?
No, not at all. We and even pre-pandemic, we've been running the program using Zoom. So I should have invested in Zoom, but way back then.
It's just as well you didn't. It's gone round trip.
Oh, okay. But we have a huge in-person component. In the beginning of our program, we were on a road tour. So like this 24 hours that I've been in Tucson is a break in between like 8 different stops on our road tour that we're on. So I'll be in Dublin, Ireland on Monday, which means I got to fly back to LA today and then turn around tomorrow and go to Dublin.
I've seen you at that. You're a father.
I'm a father of 3 daughters.
How old are they?
My youngest is in high school. She's 14. Wow. My middle daughter, Sammy, is in college at the new school in Manhattan. And my oldest is 24, almost 25. And she's currently in the Coachella Valley, about to go see the Coachella concert this weekend. So she's very excited.
You started young.
I did start young. Yeah.
You had children before I could find a second date. No, I'm serious.
That's fine. That's good. Well, yeah, you find the right woman. Can't mess around.
You cannot mess around. So
right.
Are you home a lot? Or are you out on the road a lot? I mean, I guess pandemic times, they saw an unprecedented amount of dad.
Yeah, I was home the entire pandemic. But my, and my girls came back home. The ones who were, out of the house also came back home for a lot of the pandemic.
Right. You get an extra year of Zachary.
Exactly. An extra
Which
year.
Had pluses and minuses, of course.
Well, it was all pretty good. But unexpected, basically, right? But it was good. But we, I travel. So I travel a lot in the spring because that's when we do our road tour. So it's really a diligence process. I told you I was a VC. We have, just to give you a sense, like we had over 1,000 companies apply this year to Medtech Innovator, over 1,000, of which like 85% are new to us. 15% are probably repeat applicants. Like 85% are brand new, we've never seen before. So 858, 900 companies I've never even seen before.
How many are in at any given time? How many can you handle at once?
Well, we take into our program, we have different cohorts now. So we have one that's what we call our US program, and that's focused on companies where the US is their primary market. Doesn't matter where they're based. They can be based in Europe, as long as the US is the primary market that they're focused on. That's our US program. That's 50 companies. We have an Asia Pacific cohort focused on companies that are looking at the Asia markets as their primary markets. That's 20 companies. We have a pediatric cohort that'll be 5 companies this year. We have a plastic surgery cohort of 3 companies that's brand new this year, in partnership with the American Society for Plastic Surgeons. We have a biotools cohort that'll be 15 companies this year of people developing those proteomic and sequencing and diagnostic types of technologies. So we'll have a lot of companies.
Do you always have, when they get into a program, by definition, do you take an equity stake?
We don't take an equity stake in any of the companies. We're structured as a nonprofit, and we're funded entirely by the industry. We're funded by a number of federal agencies as well. So we're an accelerator for BARDA. We're an accelerator for some work in the U.S. Army, military. We do work for FDA funds the pediatric program that we run. So anyways, we all of our funding comes from them.
You're practically a government body of some kind.
Well, we're a nonprofit. I don't know if I'd say we're a government body, but we're definitely a charity. And again, like, this is 100%. We are structured and set up to make technology, to help technology reach patients, and with the appropriate value propositions so they can be purchased.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing, I don't know how sensitive a question, when you talk about the sponsorship and all the monies that come to you from the various bodies, is there a number you could kind of give us a sense of how big your annual budget is?
Our annual budget's a little over $3.5 million. And so we have sponsors that, range from small service providers who are giving us 25 grand a year up to, some people who are giving us $1 million a year. So it just depends on the.
Are there any who give you in-kind services? I'll do your 510Ks and not charge you.
So we, the service providers all give us in-kind services on top of their cash sponsorships. They do both. We don't have anyone who's passive. No one writes us a check and just, and we put their logo on a slide, with only the exception of when someone sponsors an event. So like if TriNet sponsors an event or something. Mm-hmm. Besides that, all of the corporate partners, when I say we have 27, they're all engaged in mentoring the companies and helping, and with their personnel. In addition to
Sue, unmute yourself, and I'd like to see, not to put you on the spot, how would she go about applying, and what kind of advice would you give her? Does she belong? That kind of thing. Sue, tell Paul about your technology, where you are.
I'm president and founder of Cartech, Cartech Corp now. And I'm a pharmacist by trade. I saw a problem with the filtering of medications packaged in glass ampules. If you don't know what a glass ampule is, this is a glass ampule. The problem is, once you break the neck, 100% of the time glass shards get into there, and it has to be filtered before it can be administered to the patient. The current process involves multiple needles and multiple steps, which can lead to glass shard contamination in the bloodstream or needle stick increase for the healthcare professionals. So I came up with an all-in-one package, one needle filter device, and I just happen to have it here. And so I relocated the filter from the lure lock end to the tip. And all you do is insert it into the ampule, withdraw the medication, remove the outer cover, and inject. All in one needle, and less needle stick injuries. We are currently, we finished our US human factor studies. We're currently conducting EU studies in about 2 weeks, and we're preparing for FDA 510K Class 2. We anticipate submission Q4 of 2022. So we're getting close, and we do have licensing partners. I call them the BNC, big needle company, that would like to take over the sales and marketing. So we're pretty far along. I've taken many incubators, accelerators, I-Corps, but I always know that I need to learn more. My company has a CFO, a CEO, research and developer, secretary, vice president, and myself. So we're a very small startup.
You're going to be rich. Honestly, I mean, I've known you for more than a year now, and I knew kind of what you were working on, but that was a great little, I understand. Nice pitch.
Great, thanks.
Nice
I'm learning.
Yeah. So Sue, tell me, in terms of funding, what have you guys done so far in terms of, who's funded this?
I started out bootstrapping, working full time, and then I realized I had to jump off that cliff. So I started taking investments through friends and family. I've been working with a company down in the Research Triangle area who's helping us prepare. They're kind of an all-in-one factory, Galero. And then right before COVID hit, I did like a last pitch in Baltimore. I'm in the Maryland DMV area. And then in a small pitch, and from those two pitches, I was able to secure a lead investor, my CEO, a banker, and it was a good night. And I don't even remember what I did. I was so exhausted. But so we have a lead investor, and we also have Tedco Investing, who matched our lead investor. And we're almost ready for a Series A. We may do a bridge round. So we've raised about $1.2 million to date.
And as far as that 1.2 million, like how much is left? How long does that last you? Like, will it last you out of it?
Well, it's starting to get very expensive because we're doing, there's labeling and packaging and accelerated aging and the ISO. So I anticipate I have about a 6-month runway.
Okay. Sorry, but I'm declining a call that's coming in. Hold on.
Oh, good.
Oh, 1 second.
So while we're doing that, Sue, from what you've heard from Paul, you wrote in the notes that you thought you might be a good candidate. What would you, just from what you know so far, what would you hope to get out of joining his program? That it sounds as though everything's moving swimmingly for you. What's incremental and that you think? And then I'll ask Paul if in fact that's the kind of thing he'd be able to give you.
Probably learning more about the corporate structure and going to a Series A and eventually acquisitions. I really know very little about that. And I'm always willing to learn something. There's always something I don't know. And this is just our first product. We have other products down the line, which I can't really talk about. But.
May I paraphrase what I think I heard you just say?
Yes.
You're a pharmacist by trade. You've made some cool inventions. You understand that part, but you've not really been a manager of a company, and you're the president and CEO of something that is growing, and you want to learn how to do that better. Is that what you just said? Okay. Paul, is that something that she would get if she were admitted into the program?
Yeah. I mean, we are here to provide guidance in pretty much any area that companies need. It's not so much CEO training. It's not like that kind of an accelerator. There are, ones that are more like that. For us, it's more about the value proposition for the product, making sure that as a product, I hadn't gotten to that question I was going to get to about what this does for cost. Is this more expensive than the existing standard of care, and some other things, but the value working on the value propositions, who are the stakeholders, what is, who's going to pay for this, are they going to pay for it? And really we do a lot of work on helping to perfect people's value propositions, and then additionally we also will introduce you and socialize you with, we would socialize you with the people who know the things that you're asking about. So, other CEOs who could answer questions for you about structure, about how to do deals with, strategics, partners and distributors. Just kind of in general, we have a huge, we've over 1,000 people that are part of our ecosystem. So almost any question, anything, people have, they get answered, and we try to, again, marry them up with the experts. Also, so for example, if you were accepted into our program, you get a corporate mentor, as well as many others, but you get a corporate mentor. That's the only people we can accept are people who we have a corporate mentor for, because it is really kind of a corporate mentorship program. So like in your case, it might be Beck and Dickinson, let's say, as an example. And so you would only be accepted if they said, yeah, we're interested in working with this company. We don't just take people, we don't charge anybody anything, as Joe was asking before. So it's not like we're saying, oh, well, we just charge people a fee and we come and help them out. We only take them if our partners say, I want to work with that company.
So can I infer then that oftentimes a partner is thinking this might be an acquisition candidate? These are what we've come to know as strategic partners, and they end up being kind of the front runners of who would be a good company to merge with?
That is correct. Yeah. No,
that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So I mentioned we're on this road tour, and I'm not, and Stu, I'll stay on your topic too for a minute, but I'm saying I'll go off topic for 1 second, Stu. And that is, so the road tour that I'm on.
We do that all the time.
Yeah. So the road tour that I'm on, when I say I'm on a road tour, we're going to Dublin on Monday. We've been in Houston and DC and LA and done a virtual pitch event. Got Boston coming up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We have at each of those events, we're inviting companies that our partners are interested in meeting with. So we do about 20% of the applicants, so 200 companies. that we're inviting to pitch. And this is just in our US program, not our Asia program, or other programs. So for 200 companies are invited to pitch at these different events. The one in Dublin on Monday will have 28 companies presenting, and we'll have 70, 80 evaluators that are there, 80 judges, if you want to call them judges. But they're the people from all of our strategic partners. We'll have representatives there, service provider partners will be there, investors will be there, clinicians will be there from a number of institutions in Dublin in this case. There's usually some payers and other people at these events too. So we have like all these people that these companies get to meet with. So for example, if we had Sue's company, she'd be there pitching, but it's not like she just gets up and does a pitch and get off the stage. It's a whole day of basically like partnering with specifically the people who you'd need to work with. So you'd make all these contacts, meet all these people. And even if we didn't accept you into our program at the end of that, and we don't do it at the end of the day, at the end of our process, even if you didn't make it into the program, about 25% of the companies make it in. You would have made all those contacts, met all those people, and learned a ton. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at the message at the bottom.
Let me ask, is this David Kasic's event at the Shelbourne?
Yeah. So our conference is on. I'm sorry.
Is David, how affiliated is David with you and your program?
So we try to tag our pitch days on the road tour next to another event that will give people a good reason to come in for it as well. So in addition to doing Medtech Innovator, if you're a startup and you're presenting, you can also go over to the Medtech Strategist conference that you were referencing at the Shelbourne Hotel. And
which is an amazing place if you've not
been. An amazing conference.
I'm sure. Eddie, you probably have been.
It's a great conference. So there's that. And for our corporate partners, everyone's flying in for the most part, except for, maybe an occasional person who's local. So everyone's flying in. So it's nice to have something else for them to do as well.
Now, they have to pay to attend the conference though, right?
In this case, they do. But a lot of the conferences, like when they don't always have to. So like we do this with Wilson Sonsini for their annual medical device conference as well. And I think all of our startups get comped for that conference. The AdvaMed annual meeting in October, all of our companies are comped to go to that conference. And our judges, if they're speaking on panels and things, they don't have to pay either. So a lot of people get to go to those conferences for free. We're going to be at the Device Talks conference in Boston, May 10th and 11th. Tom Salemi's conference, Mass Device Talks, Medical Device Outsourcing, those guys. All of our companies and all of our judges are comped to go to that conference. So that's 130 people or something will be comped to go to his conference in a couple of weeks. So anyways, that's a long answer to your question.
I appreciate it though. So from what you've heard from Sue, and I know it's far more complicated than Paul is sitting in his hotel room, would you say, oh yeah, you should totally go for it? Or, well, you'll need to do this and that before? I mean, how do you have a sense of, oh my God, yes, absolutely, or I'm not really sure? We're all friends here.
Yeah, no, well, of course, I'm not really sure, because there's a lot more questions I would ask. But I would say this, I tell people all the time, just apply. The reason I say that is, even if we don't invite you to one of the pitch events that I was just talking about, every one of these applications gets reviewed by 5 to 7 people, and at minimum, and some are more like 20 or 30 people reviewing it. And they're all investors and strategic and all those things. And I read every one of them, as well as other members of my team. And we tag the applications for specific partners. So for example, if I said, oh, this could be a good fit for BD, I would check that box. And then their team reviews it and they go through and they comment on it. And so you're getting on the radar of people who wouldn't have known about you in many cases before. And they can even reach out and say, hey, I like what you're doing. I think this is great. And, have you tried this or whatever? So anyways, but the point is, I tell people just apply, because even going through the application, so we don't just say, like some people have an application where it's like, here, send me your PowerPoint and fill in your name and address and your email address. We have a robust application that mirrors the kinds of questions I ask, as an investor. And it takes a couple hours to fill in. Usually it's just copying, pasting from stuff you already have in an executive summary or somewhere else, but it makes people think of things that they don't often think about or they haven't thought about yet. And so just answering the questions in our application prepares you a bit for more sophisticated investors.
I think I'm going to ask every client I have to apply to it, because it sounds as though even if they're woefully premature to join, that you're basically giving them a template of what you need to do if you're going to be successful.
Right. Of the questions that someone, as I said, who's sophisticated is going to ask. And if you can't answer those questions, then you need to go think about how to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Right now I'm thinking like, Joe Hage, missed the boat. I should have had this conversation with you 3 or 4 years ago to channel my group through your program.
Well, it's not too late. Look, we're here right now. So
it's true. We'll talk after this.
All right. That sounds good.
Actually, I want to ask you a question. It was just yesterday. You may or may not, you may or may not recognize the name. Vivek Kaparti is a friend who attended my event in 2015 and 16. Back then I had a feature called the Manufacturer Showcase, where I had young companies, show their stuff, and the winner got something. And he won that second year, I think. And I'd lost touch with him. And I reached out to him and I said, actually I had a speaker drop. My event is in 3 weeks. And he said, I'll be in Ohio the day before, but you were so kind and you gave me a great discount that first year. I'm going to fly in, speak, and leave. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful karma, and thank you. And I accepted, and he'll be there. And he said, I'm part of a lot of like boards and things now, and I'm always joining these groups and networking and the like. And he said, I have not found a med device specific peer CEO forum. There are plenty of groups. There's even this, but there's no.
Right. Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So that I think the number one advantage of MedTech Innovator is exactly what you just described. The number one advantage is that we have a peer network. So I didn't give these stats before, but I'm going to give the stats now.
Please.
So we have 420 companies that have been through MedTech Innovator at this point. With the companies that will be onboarding this year, and our different cohorts will be over 500 companies by the end of this year. Going back to 2013 when we started, those 420 companies, 95% of them are either still in business or have been acquired. 95%. I can tell you as a venture capitalist, as all those things, I know anybody who has that kind of hit rate. So we're just very good at picking companies. Literally 5%, 20 companies have shut down out of 420, which is insane. And so the reason I mention that is that the peer network that we have as part of MedTech Innovator is unparalleled. It is the cream of the crop of med device, med tech, health tech, in some cases, CEOs and leadership teams, not just the CEOs. And they have access to that network. So when someone says, hey, we're doing a fundraise and, I'm really looking for a venture fund that, has close ties with with hospital systems, let's say, or something. Or I'm looking for, a payer who also, is an investor, or I'm looking for a board member, or I'm looking at a vendor and I'm not sure, what do you guys think, or I'm looking for a particular KOL, you name it, our network has it. And that's
they were
really
never part of the program.
Thing.
So Vivek, for example, his company is far enough along. He's done really well. He's grown leaps and bounds. I don't think that he's at a stage where it's not the right word to say need to join or need to apply to yours. Like he's further along. So how could he tap into that network if he was never part of the program?
So if he's not part of the program at all, he can't tap into the network. So currently it's a closed network. It's like saying,
we all went to business school.
How do you tap into the Harvard? I want to tap into the Harvard Business School network. You can't do that. Right. You have to graduate it. But half the companies, and I didn't explain this earlier when I said 50 companies get accepted into the US program. Half of them are early stage, meaning seed, Series A, typically, and half are later stage. The event I mentioned at the Boston Device Talks conference is only for companies that have already raised a Series B or later. We have companies that have raised $150 million, $200 million that will be pitching at that event. We have one, I think that's like doing $400 million a year in revenue who's pitching at that event to be part of MedTech Innovator. and to be part of what we call our showcase cohort. And those are companies that we showcase. That's why we call it that. At the Wilson Sonsini conference, at the AdMed conference, the only companies that can present, this is not always widely telegraphed, but the only companies that can present at the AdMed conference. If you said, hey, I want to pitch, I've got this really great medical device, we already are approved by the FDA and we have, early revenue and whatever, and I want to pitch at the AdMed conference, you can't. The only way to do it is if you're a MedTech innovator company. So that's part of the funnel for that opportunity is MedTech innovator. So these companies, that's one of the reasons why the later stage companies apply. So we have a lot of those later stage companies in our program. And they get a ton out of it, by the way, Joe. Not just the opportunity to showcase.
People who decided to just show up, so
that's okay. Your street will be clean. Anyways, but the point is, there's a lot of later stage companies. Like we had, I was thinking like Neosis in the last cohort, who's got a dental robot for dental implant surgeries. That's just awesome. And they're in I think they've got hundreds of units they've already installed, and they're expensive capital equipment. They got hundreds of employees. Like they were in the program last year and they got a lot out of it. So
Paul, you had a question. Mr. D'Souza.
Hey, Paul, I'm Paul D'Souza.
Hey,
Love your presentation. It's amazing. You just, it's like a dream. I've been involved with the Founder Institute, very different accelerator. I just love everything you're saying. But anyways, hey, and I've been mentoring for 6-7 years with those guys and Plug and Play. I'm involved in the supply chain space, and obviously a lot of your companies need supply chain. How could I mentor? How does one become a mentor? Is there a process? Are the mentorship roles linked only to the sponsors who then get involved? What's that process look like? I just love to participate. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's great. So we have some mentors who are not sponsors, and they're just ones that are invited to be mentors. And they're not like the primary mentors. The primary mentor is always one of those corporate sponsors or sometimes multiple for a company. But we'll just invite people. We'll say, hey, Paul's got this expertise in supply chain. And as we go through each one of our companies, we'll say, we assess ourselves, and they also tell us what needs they have. And some will say, supply chain, I've got a huge problem with supply chain. And I want to understand that. So we say, oh, great.
Yeah, please
got somebody
in on that.
His name is Paul. Why don't you, after this, just email me, Paul at medtechinnovator.org. And I'm happy to, I'll hook you up with Brian Benson, who's overseeing that right now. And soon one named Diane is going to be taking over for the US program. But they'll give you a call and you guys can talk. So.
Yeah. Fantastic. Appreciate it. Really love what you're doing. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Eddie, you had a comment, Mr. Capabianca?
Yeah, hi, Paul. I am myself based in the UK, but I mentioned in the comments there, I happen to know a couple of folks in Ireland who might be interested in those very short notice. Is there a link I could send them for your event on Monday?
Yeah. Now, are these people who you're saying would be potential judges, or what is their? Tell me about the people real quick.
So, basically, they're folks who have been or are currently entrepreneurs. Some of them may also be, potential investors who are looking, who have experience in the industry. So it just might be an interesting networking event for them. Like I say, I don't know what the entry fee is. So I don't know how that all works, but
there's no fee. So for our pitch day on Monday, and it's Monday, so it's short notice, obviously. But
like I say, it's very short notice. We could potentially include them. It just we'd have to just go through and just quickly talk to them and get to know them and make sure that the right kinds of people to have in that event. So again, like if you email me and if you just again, I'm Paul at medtechinnovator.org. Copy Brian, Brian, Brian at medtechinnovator.org. And we'll quickly get in touch with them. If you can send me the contact info, like if you want, if these are people that you probably want to quickly ask them, are you interested in doing this? Are you available Monday to spend the day? It's a day. It goes from 8 a.m. to, we finish, I think, at 5, and then we have a reception at the Trinity Long Room. So, so between 8 and, they basically be busy between 8 and 5.
There is an opportunity for people to do a half day, but it's more effective when they're there for the whole day. So if they're available and they're interested, if they, especially if they, they're investors, that's a great thing, because 28 amazing companies are going to be there. If they're available, love to always meet new people and add them into the ecosystem. So, but it would be Monday. So if they're available, yeah, like just send me their contact info and we'll quickly get in touch. And
at David's event, I attended maybe back in 2014 or 15. I know it wasn't a free admission thing. So
that's not free. Yeah. David's conference is not free. David's conference is not free.
The beginning of it,
but there's,
you happen the day before and then people stay for his?
Yeah. So ours is Monday and his is Tuesday through Thursday. While his conference is definitely not free.
Right. I recall it was
expensive.
Not free.
It's expensive. It's like $3,000 or whatever they charge. But it's at the Shelbourne, and the Shelbourne is a very small hotel. And all of the networking components happen outside of places where people are checking badges, really. So I don't even know if anyone ever checks badges there. People can wander in and, network and do that stuff even without a badge, I'm sure, with no problem. But it is a great conference.
What's the incremental benefit for someone who comes on Monday to stick around for the 3 days for David?
It's just, you've got the benefit is, the content is always great. He's got great sessions and he's got lots of companies presenting that are really interesting. And then the partnering is probably the best component of it, I think, which is, why a lot of people pay that fee, is to go and have the ability to schedule meetings with investors, strategics, startups, if you're interested in startups, service providers, others, all the attendees. And it's an intimate conference, meaning that I have to look at the list. I can't remember how many, 500 people, 600, 700, maybe 700 people. So it's not a huge event where you can't approach people. People are very approachable at the conference. So, you could pretty much walk up and talk to anybody that you'd like to talk to without, and it's the kind of conference, most conferences, speakers show up and they give on a panel and then they get out of there. I remember I was at the health conference the health tech conference in Vegas, and wherever they're moving the conference these days, which is a really cool, fun conference, super hip. I remember seeing Bernard, I can't think of his last name, who just died, from Kaiser Permanente, who was the CEO, on a panel. As I was getting in my cab, I saw him on a TV monitor in the room I was in. He was up on a stage somewhere speaking, and I got in and I was like, oh, I was listening to him give his talk, and it was really interesting. And then I literally walked out the door, got in a cab, and went to the airport. And as I was going to the security line, I turned around and he was standing right behind me. So that was how fast he got off stage and managed to get to the airport, and be literally right behind me in security. So those, a lot of those conferences, people, literally the speakers just blow out the second they're done.
No, I know. No, they do me a favor.
Medtech,
otherwise, I ask my guys to stick around the whole time.
Please stick around. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, I can't. I have a flight. I've got a meeting.
Bernie,
at Medtech Strategist, nobody leaves. That's the point I've been trying. It was a long story to say. At Medtech Strategist, they stick around for those 3 days. So they speak on Monday. They're there Tuesday and Thursday and whatever. And you don't have to Wednesday, Thursday. They're there. They're there at the networking. They're there at the pubs later that night. You can hang out in the lobby until 2 a.m. and talk to people. So there's a lot of benefit to hanging out.
Bernie, you asked a question with an acronym I do not recognize.
Oh, so that's actually a website, gust.com.
Yeah.
I do mentoring through California Life Science through their FAST program. And a lot of I'm an engineer, dyed in the wool. So I don't know a lot of the business side of things, but I do mentoring with a lot of people who are business development, and they typically highly recommend Gust. And I didn't know if you guys are connected through Gust in terms of how the application process goes, or if you really have your own separate channel. So just curious about that.
We use our own platform. Yeah, we have a very purpose-built platform for what it is that we do, that's all integrated into all the systems that we built to run this program, which is extensive. So Gust wouldn't work for us. But Gust is great if someone's looking to get some visibility for a company. Gust is a nice platform to use. Or if you're an angel group and you want to have a platform that people can submit through and stuff, Gust is great for that. But it doesn't work for us.
You wouldn't disgust.
No, I would not disgust.
It's more, it's
No,
my understanding is that
disgust.
it's more
Thank you.
angels early and you're like really more later. And so it sounds like it's just a little bit different.
Well, I mean, it's not so much about the stage as much as it is just about from a platform perspective. You know, there's a bunch of vendors, Gust included, that make their business of having a platform that people can use to apply for things. And Gust is a nice one, but it just doesn't work for us, unfortunately.
So
Lauren, you had some comments too.
I was just gonna say, so I guess my question would be, since I see a lot of different startups, typically at early stage, would basically, could I direct them, or would it be appropriate to direct them to Medtech Innovator?
Yeah. Well, first of all, of course, we'd love you to direct people to Medtech Innovator. There's also, it's really more for our judges and for our corporate partners. We have a nomination form that people can use to submit companies and say, you know, I really think, you know, you explain, you know, what the relationship is, and you nominate and give the contact information. And then we just reach out to the company and have them apply like usual. But what those companies get is, when we go through our review process and we choose the companies that pitch, we start with the nomination pool. And we look through all the nominated companies, and there's hundreds of them. And we review them first. And we start assigning slots to those companies. Then we go back to the rest of the pool. So the nominated companies get a bit of an advantage. We call it a priority review. So we can talk after this if you just want to email me, and I'll connect you up with the form. But our cycle is closed for this year, so it'll be for our next year program. But that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul.
And again, it's paul@medtechinnovator.org or com.
Correct. .org.
Maren, you wanted to share?
I just wanted to say hi to Paul. I don't remember me or not, but I was a judge at the Seattle Forum way back when you first started.
Way back when, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was terrific. Yeah, no, I remember you very well.
I just wanted to put in a plug. If anybody's interested in judging, it's a really fun thing to do. I think I've done it every year since that first Seattle thing on the online form. So there's opportunities to judge both at the live events, plus there is screening that you can do as they're going through all the companies. I love looking at new companies and an investor. So to me, it's really fascinating to see the variety of companies that come in, and the information that they're required to provide is really good. So thank you. It's been a real fun program to be associated with.
Thanks, Mara.
Paul, how many, if you don't mind, how many companies have you seen such promise that you found a way to become an equity holder?
So I have, since the beginning of Medtech Innovator, I had taken a position that I was not going to make equity investments in the companies. And I know that sounds strange, but I just decided I wasn't going to. And
since then, is there a since then?
No, I'm saying in the beginning. I'm saying in the beginning. But we are putting together a venture fund. Maybe not surprising. From the very first initial version of the plan for Medtech Innovator, we had two entities that we put on paper and said, we're going to have a venture fund and an accelerator. And we focused on this accelerator this entire time and have been doing so. And so one of the things that we are working on is also doing a venture fund. And it's just been the question of like, do we invest in everything? Do we invest in some things? There's signaling risk and all these things that you have to think about. But we are definitely going to do.
Talk to me about signaling risk.
Signaling risk just means like, a company doesn't get an investment. What does that mean? So if you only invest in some of your companies, and to give you an idea, like last year, there were about 100 of our companies that had funding rounds that closed last year. 100. How many of those would I have invested in? If we invest in everything, that's fine. But then, it changes maybe the structure of, how your portfolio is constructed, how much money you're putting in each company.
How many of them would you have wanted to?
I'm sorry?
How many of those would you have wanted to?
Of those that I would have wanted to, of the 100 that closed last year, I probably would have invested in at least 70 of them.
70?
Yeah, I'm saying at least 70 of them. I mean, because these are, as I said, we're picking good companies. So now if I only had the opportunity to invest in a handful, which is the typical structure of a venture fund, you're only doing
I hear you.
four or five investments a year. That would be a lot for most venture funds. Some are doing 2 or 3 a year. And
are you still affiliated with RCT at all?
No, they just give me money. I'm not, I don't work for them or anything.
No, I know you don't work for them, but you know, the fact that you're looking to set up a venture fund and you already have a very close association with one, are they kind of what Paul would have built by now if he had more bandwidth?
Oh yeah, and I think that's a fair statement. Like if I had the ability to just have a venture fund team sitting right over here next to me, RCT is the kind of structure I would use. I mean, I really like their structure there. I like the way they've set things up. So yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, you know, I'll certainly be doing this in close, you know, consultation with some of the folks over at RCT, because they're just so knowledgeable about, you know, what they've done. They're actually not a typical venture fund. They're a company that's been around for over 100 years and acts like a venture fund, but they're not truly a venture fund because nobody invests in RCT. They're a captive pool of capital that has just been growing over the last 100 years. I'm just giving you a time check, Joe, that I have.
I know. I'm going to lose you in a few
5
minutes. Yep, yeah, you got it. Does anyone on the call have anything they wanted to contribute? Just take yourself off mute and say hi. Ironically,
of course, I always think about packaging because I see so many companies where if they just tweak their product a tiny bit, they wouldn't have had any problems with packaging on the production lines or shipping or some of the user things. So how are you guys looking at their packaging for these companies, or is that something that everybody thinks they'll fix later?
Is there a packaging engineer go-to person? Because if not, Jan is it for you.
Jan, excellent. The closest thing we really do to that right now is one of our corporate sponsors is Oliver, and they're really more like, you know, their packaging and, you know, things like sterile barriers and stuff like that is like their
they mainly do films and
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm saying they're that's the closest thing to what you're describing, is that we have them and they'll weigh in on some of our companies, but that's really it. We don't really have a packaging.
Jan, you have the man's email address, so make sure
let's
you follow
talk.
up.
Yeah, because it's been pretty amazing to me, some of the weird things I've seen. I mean, even just trying to get them sterilized, if they had done something a little bit differently, it would have helped them tremendously. So
yeah,
so Jan's your best. Jan will be able to tell you about where to, you know, watch out for problems early on.
That's great.
Yeah, I had one company that bought another company.
Only because we're losing Paul in a minute or two.
Oh, sorry. I'll go on, but yeah, I got weird.
Yeah, Jan,
Bianca.
Yeah, so Jan,
how is your fundraise going? And is there anything you heard today that was of particular interest?
So Paul, what we're doing is we're developing commercializing, hopefully very soon, a range of products for urological control that are specifically designed for men and women that will reduce the incidence of infection and, most importantly, improve quality of life and dignity. So we are raising £2 million in equity funding. We've recently won not one, but 2 grants, which are our second and third grant wins in the past 15 months. So, you know, I'm sure there's loads. I'd love to be able to find out more about what your group does. As I said, I'm based here in the UK. I can't get to Dublin on Monday. It's my wife's birthday. I would be in big trouble.
Bring Jane. Jane.
Tuesday is
Tuesday's
my birthday, so your wife and I could celebrate.
Fantastic. But things are going pretty well right now on the fundraising front. In particular, we found a guy who's got Medtech experience, just sold his company, and has for 17 years been using a catheter. Sees what we're doing and says, this is something I want to invest into. And it's so around him, we're hoping to be able to build a good group who will all say, okay, this guy really knows what he's talking about.
I don't want to stress out our guest. I see him looking at the clock. Paul, I'm very grateful. I'm going to text you so you have my number handy. If you have a window before you board the plane, get in touch and we'll talk.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thanks, everyone.
Round of applause for our guest. Paul, this was very valuable. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Nice meeting everybody, and nice seeing Miran again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks,
and you
Paul.
too, Joe. Good seeing you, Joe. It's been too long.
Let's not.
Thanks for inviting
me. You get the idea. We'll talk.
All right, guys.
Great conversation.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.